Hey there. Welcome to Mike's Collection, episode 301. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is some brand new figures that came in just this afternoon. So it is still very early in 2024 as I sit down to do this video. It is January 10th, and I still have a whole lot of action figures that I got for Christmas that I want to show you guys. So I really thought my first couple of videos of the year would be me showing you my Christmas stuff. I really didn't expect to be getting into brand new 2024 toys so soon. But the thing with these ones is they just came in today. I haven't opened them yet. I'm dying to open them. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to sit down, shoot a video of these guys, and I'll get to the Christmas stuff in the next episode. So yeah, this is the brand new wave of Toho / Godzilla Ultimates from Super7. And I haven't seen these figures outside of the box yet. I'm hoping that I'm going to like them. I'm going to tell you my thoughts right now is I think these guys could be contenders for my best toys of 2024. These are like basically the first toys I got this year, and already my expectations are very high. People with these Super 7 figures, they seem to get some mixed reactions. When the first wave of Godzilla came out, I watched some YouTube videos to see if what everybody, the other reviewers were saying, to see if I would be interested in maybe getting these figures. Because I knew I wanted them, but they're very expensive. These Godzilla figures are $85 American. I'm Canadian, so you have to convert that, and that works out to, I don't know, probably like $120 or something Canadian, plus shipping, plus customs fees. They're not cheap. So I really was toying with the idea of maybe I don't buy these, or maybe I don't buy them all. But when Wave 1 came out, I really did want to see for myself. And if Wave 1 disappointed me, maybe I wouldn't have bought any others. But anyway, I started out watching YouTube reviewers, and I found that the majority of the reviews were kind of negative. And, you know, I understood everything they were saying. Some of the joints look a little awkward in some of the figures. They're not very articulated. The figures are very glossy, and maybe some of the promotional shots that they used to sell the figures to us had more of a matte finish. So some people felt a little duped that the finished product didn't look quite like the renders in the pre-production images. Ultimately, I decided to buy them anyway. Well, at least one. I bought the Godzilla from Wave 1. I didn't buy the Biollante figure. Anyway, I loved that Godzilla. And then shortly afterwards, a San Diego Comic-Con repaint of that Godzilla went up, and I bought that one too. So I have the standard colors, which is kind of a dark gray, and I have the San Diego colors, which are a bright green. They're supposed to be based on the comic book. And when it came time to make my list of the best of 2023 action figures just a week or two ago, I had both those figures very high up on my list, and I wasn't sure if one of them was going to make it, if they were both going to make it. I decided to go with the standard colors, Wave 1 Godzilla, and that was my number 2 best toy of 2023 for me. I loved it. Is it perfect? No. But it's big. It's chunky. I like the sculpting on it. I like the sheen, the glossy sheen on it. Anyway, so I'm just telling you that so you kind of understand where I'm coming from. If you hated the earlier Godzilla figures, you might hate these new ones too. I really liked the early Godzilla figures, so I'm expecting to really like these ones. It is very early in 2024, but already my expectations are really high on these figures that I'm thinking these could be qualifiers for my best of 2024. They're right up my alley. They're big, they're chunky, they're interesting, they're something different. So yeah, I'm really excited about them. So why don't we dive into it? So first up, this one here is called Godzilla 1200 Degrees. And you see here the box shows kind of like Godzilla's skin is what that's supposed to be. And it's melting away, and you see his like ribs through the tears there and through the melting. It's kind of gross. And it's a cool looking box. Like, it's visually striking. Lots of bright colors on there. But what I like about this box is that it's not that interesting, that it's very easy for me to throw this in the garbage once I open this up. I'm not somebody that keeps the packaging, but every once in a while when I get an expensive figure with a really cool box, I do feel compelled to hold on to it. This one here, I appreciate the packaging. It's nice and all, but I'll have no problem throwing this out once I get them open. So it's a big box. I would say it's probably the same size as the Godzillas we've already gotten. Big chunky box. So why don't we slide this sleeve off here. There you go. Not much to see on the box there. We've got a picture. I don't know if that's the original movie poster or it's some image from Godzilla versus Destroya, which is the movie that this one is based on. And in this movie, Godzilla is basically a nuclear reactor, and he melts down from the inside out. And this toy, as far as I know, is the first time we've ever gotten an action figure of that moment when Godzilla melts down. So I know you can't really see him so well in the packaging. We will open him up momentarily. But you can see he's got his flesh is kind of melting off, and you can see his sternum there, and you can see one of his arms is all bony, and half of his skull is showing through there. I know it's difficult to see, but yeah, you'll see it better in a minute. But anyway, this is really cool. I have a whole lot of Godzillas in my collection from different companies, and I don't have anything like this. So this was something that I felt I had to get. Now, I haven't bought all of the Ultimate figures. As I mentioned, when Wave 1 came out, I did not buy Biollante. And when Wave 2 came out, it featured a burning Godzilla, which is a Godzilla with like orange patches of like translucent plastic on him because he was heating up. I didn't get that one. It didn't feel different enough. Lots of companies have made burning Godzilla before. But here, Super7 has taken it a step further. Something original, something really cool. Like my first glances at it, it's meeting my expectations. It's what I was hoping for. But yeah, I think I really need to see him in hand to know for sure, but he looks pretty awesome. So we'll set him aside for now. And then we'll take a look at the other figure from this wave, which I think is Wave 3. But this guy here is the bad guy from this very movie. This is Destroya. And I don't know if you can tell, but this is a larger box than even this one. And it's heavier. It feels significantly heavier than this one here. And Super7 charged me for that extra size. This guy here was, I think, $110 American. Factor in the conversion rate to Canada, which is about an extra 30 cents on every dollar, and then the shipping. And when Canada Post, our postal service, when it showed up at my door today, I had to pay $70 in customs for these two figures too, because the box they came in together was pretty big. Anyway, I don't like to think about how much money I spent on these stupid figures, but as long as they're awesome, I will quickly forget about it. So not much to see on the box. This one's probably even less exciting than this one. Again, I'll have no problem throwing this out when the time comes. So let's see. It's on there pretty tight. All right, so there we go. On the back, you get the same imagery. Is it the same write-up? Probably. Not much else to see on the box. But then inside, there is our villain, Destroya. And he is big, and he looks cool. Now, again, it's really hard to tell because of the glare on the plastic, but this guy, not only is he bigger than Godzilla, but he's got wings, and he's got extra heads, he's got extra little creatures in the box too, extra hands. There's a lot going on here, which it'll be easier to appreciate the size of this guy once we get him open. So anyway, there's the boxes, and now that you've seen them in the packaging, I can finally open these guys up, and we can take a look at them together outside of the box. So here is Melting Godzilla outside of the box. And my first impressions are pretty good. I like it. So the whole thing is cast in this translucent plastic. So you see, like, that's the base color that was used. And then the darker skin tones, that's painted on top of it. So that's pretty cool, as opposed to like the burning Godzilla that I mentioned earlier, where he had some burning patches. I think I said translucent orange, but I didn't actually mean that. They just kind of painted orange blotches onto the skin to make it look like he had some heat patches coming through. But this here, because it's translucent, you should be able to kind of shine a light through it, which gives off that kind of burning vibe, which is pretty cool. And the sculpting here is really nice. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these segments, I was going to say, are just reused from the other Godzilla figure, but I don't know, because they do seem to have a little bit of a melting, like they're a little misshapen, which would be accurate if they were melting off. So these might be all completely new pieces. And especially as you get to the end, you see that the skin is melting off and the bone is exposed. Right through the very end of the tail is just pure bone. And so that looks really cool. And it's got a nice little, like, it was clicking around a second ago when I had it in my hand. But yeah, it's got a lot of joints. It doesn't have a ton, like, you can't get into a ton of crazy poses, but it's articulated enough that you can get into quite a few different positions. Yep, looks good. And it can be a bit of a struggle to attach these to your figures. So I'm going to try and do this. Hopefully, I'm going to do it gently because I don't want to break anything. But okay, that went on there pretty good. And if it's anything like the Wave 1 figures, like, you got a bit of a gap there, but I think you just have to push it on additionally. There's kind of like a second, it grabs it like at a second level. I don't know if it's quite doing that, but anyway, I'll mess with that a little bit later. But it attaches on there nicely. And yeah, so you see the rest of this figure here. So he's got the melting fins all the way down the back. There's multiple rows of fins. And then the skin is kind of just melting off here in other spots, with just that black kind of painted over it. And this arm here is like completely bone. It's articulated at the wrist. It's articulated at the elbow, although that doesn't seem to want to move very much right now. I'm not going to force it. I don't want to break anything. There's also a swivel right there too. But yeah, pretty good movement there. And I'm really reluctant to try too hard on any of this stuff because this is fresh out of the box. And sometimes with these figures, if they're a little stiff, you want to heat it up with a hair dryer or something. This arm here, it's mostly a fully formed Godzilla arm, but there is some melted flesh, so you can see bone on his fingers and everything. Now the face is really cool. So this side here is almost completely devoid of skin. There's a couple little bits just hanging off. The neck is quite a bit thinner too. The neck is almost completely rotted away. There's multiple joints there on the neck too, so it turns at like multiple spots. Now this side of the head, it doesn't look so much as melted as it's almost like he spilled something on himself. So this is almost like a fully formed Godzilla head with just this orange ooze running down. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. I like it. Now, one of the complaints that people leveled on the earlier figures was that the paint apps on the teeth wasn't very good. And you could kind of see that. Like, are these teeth, they could be more like individually painted. It's kind of just like a blob of paint on the teeth. But you have to be getting up pretty close to really be concerned about that. If I had a complaint about this figure, and this, I knew this when I bought it, so I can only complain so much. But none of their Godzilla figures have hinged jaws. So they usually come with two heads, so a closed mouth and a roaring mouth, which is cool and all, but if I'm picking up my Godzilla, I like to be able to just flick his mouth open and closed and stuff. I don't think the joint looks bad. All the NECA Godzillas have a little joint there. It's nothing, it doesn't break up the sculpt or anything. So yeah, I really wish Super7 had given him a hinged jaw. But, the Wave 1, the Wave 2, Godzillas didn't have a hinged jaw. I knew this guy wasn't going to have one either. So the torso. So you can see he's melted away there on the chest. There's all these big orange globs coming down here. He looks like a melted candle. His insides are kind of weird. So you see his bone there, and then the guts are kind of yellow, which I don't know if that's screen accurate necessarily, but... And let's see, the feet there's feet look cool. Like this one here is rotted away in a lot of spots. You see bones coming through on his toes, and it's mostly orange. This one here doesn't appear to be affected at all, really. So that's probably just a reused foot from the other figures. Now, it does seem a little strange that there's like no orange paint. I actually think this piece here is sculpted in black. All these other pieces are sculpted in orange with the black paint. So even if they wanted to leave this foot completely black, I still think they should have sculpted it in the orange and painted it black, because it does almost look like it belongs to a separate figure. It's so distinct from the rest of them. Not really a bad thing, though. It still looks fine. This orange, like, it's a little bit of a different shade, which is kind of obvious from here. Although it seems to match this orange. So there's a lot of brighter orange throughout. This is a little bit more yellowy. But that's okay. I don't think a creature that's burning from the inside out would necessarily burn evenly at all the same spots. He's probably thicker in some areas. Now let's see if we try and shine that light through him again, how this looks. You can see the light. I don't have a great setup to really do this, but maybe if I turn off some of these other lights I got here. So there you can see the effect a little bit more. Oh, that's cool. It kind of glows through his eye, too. But yeah, no, I think that looks pretty cool. I am quite pleased with this guy. So my first impressions of this guy is that he lives up to my expectations. I think he's really cool. Like I said, he's something different. I have so many Godzillas in my collection. You know, I've got ones that are powered up and they're red and they're orange or they're blue, and in the reaction figures I've got glow in the dark ones and, you know, brightly colored green ones. And this guy here, I don't have anyone that's melting with his exposed bone. Just really cool stuff. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, the only accessory he had, you could kind of say his tail, but not really, is he has his alternate head, which I think looks great. This is a full skull, so like his flesh is fully melted off of this one. Again, it would be nice if it had a hinged... Oh, it does. Nice. The jaw is hinged. And see, look, see how easy it was to hide that joint? Like, you could argue it's a little easier on a skeleton, but still, I wish all the Godzillas did that. Anyway, that's awesome. I didn't even know that. Anyway, I'm not sure which head I like better. This one looks really cool, but it might kind of break up the look of the melting. Anyway, I'm going to try and change this out. I'm not going to do it on camera because I have... Well, let me see. I'll try it just ever so gently. I have had figures break on camera when I'm trying to make changes like this. So let me just take him away for a second and I'll try and gently pull it off. Well, the head came off without much effort. Interesting to note that the peg inside, it's not translucent orange. It's kind of a weird, fleshy colored, suggestive looking thing. Anyway, the head does not go on easily. I'm sure it will. It probably just... If I heat this piece up with a hairdryer for just like 30 seconds, I bet it will pop right on there. But right now, it's not catching. And I don't really want to stop the video to go get out my hairdryer and all that stuff. So you can kind of see how it would look with this head on there. At this point, I'm not going to say that's a knock on the toy at all, that the head won't attach. That's not uncommon, but just a little bit of heat should get that on there. And that does look cool. I think right now I'm kind of leaning more towards keeping this head on him when I put him in my display. But both are very cool. But anyway, this guy is great. I think the last thing to do before we move on to Destroya is to do some comparisons with the other Godzilla figures. So here he is next to the Wave 1 Godzilla. And I was thinking this as I was handling this guy, but I thought he seemed a little smaller. And now that I have them side by side, I would say he certainly is. I don't know if he's... I don't know by how much, but let's see here. Like, tail-wise, this guy actually appears to have maybe a slightly longer tail. But he definitely seems to lose something in the height. These guys have such long tails that it's hard to get them both on screen here. But I don't know. They're pretty close. But like if you were imagining this guy melting into this guy, is there like a height difference? It definitely seems to be. And I did think that as I was handling him. Because I've handled these guys quite a bit. And yeah, this guy did seem a little bit smaller. And I do think that maybe he is. But at the same time, I feel that Super 7 would probably try and use as many of the same parts as possible. So like this piece here and the legs and segments of the tail. I would imagine they would just use the same sculpt. So I don't know what I'm talking about. He's pretty close to the same size anyway. But anyway, they look pretty good together. Here he is next to the Shogun Ultimate Godzilla from Super 7. Now, I've got about a dozen NECA Godzilla figures. They did a bunch of great figures just a couple of years ago. I just happened to grab this one because I thought he's orange, so that he might blend well with him, but you can see the size difference. The NECA ones are quite a bit smaller. Now, this is based on the legendary, current MonsterVerse American films. I think these Godzillas do stand a little bit shorter than the the Toho Godzillas that NECA made, but not significantly. So yeah, these Super 7 guys are quite a bit bigger than all of NECA's stuff. And here he is next to I believe this is Playmates Godzilla. This was a figure that was just sold at regular retail when the Godzilla versus Kong movie was out like 2 years ago. And I believe that Playmates is making the toys for Godzilla X Kong, which is coming out this year. So this is probably more of what you can expect from them. So yeah, if you thought, well, I'm not going to spend all this money on these Super 7 ones, I'll wait for the movie figures to come out. These guys are charming in their own way, but they're quite a bit simpler and smaller. Anyway, I would recommend grabbing these Super 7 ones. This guy is a lot of fun. So here is Destroya outside of the packaging, and I really can't even fit this guy on camera. He is just too big for my desk. I can kind of zoom out a little bit like so. But yeah, this guy is big. And for accessories, so he's got his tail, kind of a little pincer on the end there. They don't close, which is okay. I don't know if they actually did in the movie. I can't recall. And then he's got his wings, which aren't super impressive, but he didn't have huge wings in the movie either. I don't think these wings could actually lift this guy off the ground, but and then he's got his secondary little wings. He has got alternate hands. Oops. I don't know how different. So these are kind of open gripping hands. These are slightly tighter grip hands. So I don't know how necessary those really were. And he's got an alternate head, which is great, just like all the Godzillas. So he's got an open mouth and a closed mouth. And I'm not sure which one I like better. At a glance, I kind of like the roaring mouth better. But, it would be nice if you could just flip his jaw down and open his mouth. But anyway, so arguably all that stuff is is it accessories? I don't know. The tail and the wings are permanent fixtures that I'm going to attach to him. But this guy does have something a little extra, which is kind of cool. He has 3 of these little guys. Now, I don't know if they have their own name. I imagine these are all the exact same sculpt. But yeah, there's 3 of them here. And in the movie, this is what Destroya starts out like. These are basically human size. So there's lots of scenes in the movie where these little guys are running around, tearing people out of cars and running through laboratories and stuff. And then I believe they all merge together, a whole bunch of them, and they form this big Destroya in kind of the final form. And you know what? Godzilla vs. Destroya is actually one of the more recent Godzilla movies that I've watched. I own all of them, but I haven't seen many of them for years, some of them decades. They all kind of blur together in a lot of ways. And when I pre-ordered these figures last year, I rewatched that movie specifically because I wanted to see the burning, like the melting Godzilla scene, because I didn't remember it particularly vividly, and since I was buying a toy of that specific moment, I just wanted to revisit the movie. I will say I was kind of surprised that the melting Godzilla scene is pretty brief, and it kind of happens almost like, not, I don't know how to describe it, not really stop motion, but they have an image of Godzilla one way, and then it kind of fades into him a little further melted, and then fades into him a little bit melted, and it happens very very quickly. So there's not like an iconic scene with a melted Godzilla stomping around, screaming, roaring, or anything. I am kind of surprised when I went back and revisited the film that Super 7 decided to make a toy of that very moment. But I do get it because the toy is cool, so why not? Anyway, so what's the best way to approach this guy? This is just, he's so big. Try and change angles up a little bit here. But let's take a look at his head sculpt, perhaps. So the head is big. It's almost like he's got these bat wings on the side of his head. He's got a whole massive teeth there, these little tusks or whatever on the side, a big giant horn on his forehead. He looks pretty good. Now, I don't know what's going on with this paintwork, if that's supposed to be like that. It looks a little sloppy, but it's fine. One thing to note is this guy is so big. You talk about him being big and girthy, and he's really heavy, by the way. And once all of his pieces are on, I'm sure he's going to look even more impressive. But, and maybe this is accurate to the film, I don't know, but when his arms are tucked in like that, it adds to him looking big. But if you could lift his arms up, I'm not sure how much movement we have there. There is a ball joint, so his arms should go up. Yeah, when you lift his arms away from his body, he actually has a pretty skinny torso, I find, which makes him look a little bit odd. Almost like he's, you see the size of these legs. Look at the size of the thighs on this guy. So thighs like that, a head like this, and then this rather skinny little middle. It's a little off-putting, but again, I don't think I'll really notice that because I'll probably keep his arms at his side. I'll add his wings in there, and he should look pretty impressive. So otherwise, for articulation, you see he's got the elbows, he's got the wrists, they turn and they move up and down. His head, an okay range of movement with the head. Does the neck? The neck turns. Not a lot by the looks of things. Maybe if I heat that up, it might move a little bit more. He does have a joint there at the waist, so pretty good movement on the waist there. And you can see the joint on the leg, so it looks like he should have a good amount of movement, but I can't imagine it's going to be too much with these legs as thick as they are. And then on the back, so you can see he's got a single jointed knee. Yeah, and so he's got an okay range of movement on the knee, but these legs are so thick, I wouldn't expect you to be able to get much out of there. And then the ankles as well, but these, like, so you can see the joint on his ankle. So you can move it from there to there. But he's got these big, chunky, armored bits. So that stuff is kind of hindering his movement all over the place. But the paintwork is nice. I think this guy looks really cool. And the sculpting. And I have never had a Destroya figure before. When they first introduced Destroya, he was immediately one of my favorite monsters. And I would have loved to have had a toy of this guy years ago. But like so many of these Toho kaiju, they're only available from Japanese companies. And they're very, like, not only hard to get, but very expensive in North America. So I just kind of shied away from buying these guys, and I just had to live with a bunch of Godzillas. And I had one King Ghidorah figure, one Mecha Godzilla figure, but they were usually small, and the scales were all inconsistent because I had them from different companies. It's nice now that a company's finally making all these other creatures, the obscure ones, and they're all to scale, and they're big, and yeah, he's just really cool. Anyway, why don't I cut away for a second, and I'm going to try and attach his wings and his tail and all that stuff. All right, so here is Destroya with all of his parts snapped on, at least for the most part. So you'll see I changed out the head. So now he's got the roaring head. And I will say none of these pieces were easy to get on. And he hurts to hold on to. Like when you're really trying to screw this head on and you're holding him tight, like everywhere on his body he's got spikes on it and stuff. It's very uncomfortable. I did have to get out the hair dryer. I really didn't want to have to do that. So I did have to walk away for a few minutes to go get my hair dryer in order to get his head on. I had to do the same for the tail, and I still don't necessarily think I got the tail on quite right. There still seems to be a bit of a gap there, although it seems to be holding in place. And you can see it's got multiple joints of articulation as well. But yeah, it's hard to hold on to. You get a grip on that, but it's really sharp. His wings, so he's got these kind of little secondary wings. You plug those on there, and then they are articulated. There's a joint there, so you can move the wings. Same with the bigger ones, which is almost like he's got a whole second arm there. I was kind of surprised when I was attaching that to see just how kind of muscular that is. And I don't think I got that on quite right as well. You can see there is a gap in there. So I think I need to wrestle with that a little bit more. But that's got a joint as well, so you can move his wings. So yeah, I didn't bother to change out his hands because they're barely different. But the one issue I did have is this wing here. When I was attaching the wing to the plug, it popped out entirely. And it's not supposed to. That's just they didn't glue it in there good enough. So the glue gave way, and now I can't just pop it back in there because the wing is so heavy that that's just not really going to hold it. It might do it for display purposes, but I tried to plug it in. It already fell out a couple of times. So that's a little annoying. I might have to apply some crazy glue of my own to get it to work. But anyway, this guy is so big, I really can't get him on screen. So I will just back up a little bit like this. But yeah, he is pretty impressive. Yeah, I like this guy quite a bit. I'd say both of these figures, see what I mean? I would say both of these figures today have lived up to my expectations. I will have to fiddle around with them a little bit more. Perhaps I was a little too quick to jump into the review. Sometimes, it's better to maybe heat up these parts and get the figure all assembled and kind of make some decisions about what you like and what you don't like before you immediately, jump into a review. But I had handled these guys for all of 2 seconds before I jumped into this review. I think they look great. The sculpting and the paint I really like. I have no issues with, any of these details. Some people complain about the teeth and stuff. It could be better, sure. But I think it looks pretty gnarly and kind of cool, actually. As soon as these arrived, I showed my wife this figure, and she said it looks like he has a giant butthole on his chest. So that's going to be a hard thing not to see anymore. But overall, I think this guy is really cool. I'm quite pleased with him, except for that wing issue. Now, if I can fix that with some crazy glue, then no big deal. But I do think this guy's cool. I like that he comes with these little guys here that I can display around him when I put him on my shelf. They might size up good with some of my Godzilla reaction figures. Yeah, not too bad. And lastly, before we wrap things up here, I'll just show you how he compares size-wise with some of these other Godzillas in my collection. So you can see, compared to the Ultimate Godzillas here from Super 7, which were already pretty big and impressive, when I opened up this Godzilla from Super 7, last year, I thought, wow, this guy's so much bigger than like all my NECA figures and stuff like that. He just really felt big and chunky and substantial, but he's kind of dwarfed by Destroya. So I can understand the additional price. But yeah, he's definitely an impressive figure. Sucks about his wing, but otherwise, pretty damn cool. Okay, so that was my review of the latest Toho / Godzilla Ultimates figures from Super 7. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me comments below, tell your friends. And make sure you come back for my next video, which will probably be up very soon. And I'll be talking about some of the cool stuff I got for Christmas. And yeah, there's still lots of cool toys coming out in 2024. So I will be back very soon. I'll see you then. Ciao.